bought a dream cabin for $50,000. Then, an Apache woman stunned him with a shocking claim. Jack Thompson felt a rush of exhilaration as he stood on the porch of his newly purchased cabin, the smell of pine filling his lungs. This was his sanctuary, a long-awaited retreat from the relentless grind of his architectural career in Phoenix. After years of sketching the blueprints of others' dreams, he had finally carved out a piece of land that was solely his. A $50,000 investment felt like a steal for a canvas of rustic charm and natural serenity. Every weekend, he envisioned laughter echoing around campfires, his family gathered beneath a canopy of stars, resuming the joy of togetherness that city life often neglected. Yet, as he settled into this daydream, an unsettling knock reverberated through the cabin walls. The door creaked open to reveal Nora, a fierce Apache woman whose presence demanded attention. Her eyes, deep and unyielding, seemed to pull at the very core of Jack's anxiety. "This land belongs to my ancestors," she declared, her voice steady but laced with a heartbreaking weight. Jack's spine went rigid. Ownership flashed before his mind like a cruel joke. The cabin that was supposed to be his refuge now felt like a fortress built on lost heritage and sorrow. Caught between the dissonance of his dreams and Nora's profound claim, Jack grappled with a storm of emotions. Why had fate led him to this moment? His instincts urged him to defend what he had fought so hard to acquire. Friends had congratulated him, reassured him of his right to the land, fueling his belief in meritocracy and self-determination. But as he watched Nora stand resolute, unwavering in her conviction, the pillars of his moral compass began to crumble. The tension coiled tightly in his chest. He was not just defending an investment. He was wrestling with lineage, history, and the realities embedded in the earth beneath him. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As days passed, Jack immersed himself in research, flipping through old family records and local histories, desperately seeking clarity. What he discovered set his heart racing and his pulse throbbing. He stumbled upon tales of solidarity, of his own ancestors being helped by Nora's family years back during a tumultuous time. This revelation threw him into a pit of anguish. The irony of their connection was staggering. How could he reconcile his dreams for this cabin with the graffiti of others' suffering stamped across its roots? Jack's fingers trembled as he traced the records, searching for resolution in an ocean of confusion. The walls of the cabin seemed to close in on him, pressing him to choose his aspirations for peaceful retreats or the promise of honoring a bond formed from shared heritage and sacrifice. Torn between hope and guilt, he realized this was no longer a mere property dispute. It had transformed into a struggle for his identity, a reckoning of what it truly means to belong. With day bleeding into dusk, he knew he stood upon the precipice of a choice that would reverberate not just within him, but throughout the community, demanding understanding amidst the rising tension. The morning sun broke through the tree line, casting dappled light across Jack's cabin, but rather than warmth, it felt like an impending judgment. Jack stood with his hands on the edge of the porch railing, consciousness swirling with the weight of his predicament. The revelation about his ancestors intertwined with Nora's claim was suffocating him. As he stared into the woods, he questioned not just the legitimacy of his purchase, but the very essence of his identity. He had always prided himself on being a self-made man, an architect who could design dreams with precision. But here he was, paralyzed by uncertainty, questioning if he had ever really understood the land he adored. Each twig snapping underfoot seemed to echo resentment, a reminder of the past he had barely begun to comprehend. He decided that he could no longer be an outsider in this narrative. A plan began to form, fueled by equal parts determination and desperation. After spending hours with the old records, Jack resolved to confront Nora directly. He needed to hear her story, to grasp the magnitude of her claims, not as an adversary, but as a man seeking truth buried beneath time and landscape. How had he arrived at a crossroads where he felt he could lose something so vital to him, his connection to a place that was not just a transaction, but a cornerstone of his existence? As he approached Nora's home, located a short distance from his cabin, anxiety mixed with determination. The crisp air filled his nostrils as he stepped onto her property, its beauty untainted by the struggles that seemed to emanate from within. He could see her tending to a small patch of land, the sunlight catching on the beads of sweat on her brow. With a deep breath, he called out, "Nora!" She turned to face him, her expression unreadable. The firmness in her gaze remained, but there was an invitation in her stillness that encouraged Jack to take the next step. He approached slowly, his heart thudding like a bass drum, anticipation mingled with dread. "What you said about the land? I want to understand," Jack spoke, each word emerging with a weight that felt foreign to his usually measured tongue. "I need to know what it means to you, to your people." The sincerity of his voice surprised him. His architectural mindset had previously extinguished vulnerability, but in this moment it felt imperative. Nora studied him, and in her silence, Jack sensed her weighing the implications of his request. Finally, she gestured for him to sit on a weathered bench beside her. "Every tree, every breath of wind carries a story," she began, her voice steady, yet laced with a soft resilience. "You may have bought this place, but it is much more than a cabin. It's a heritage, and a history that deserves recognition." As she spoke of the struggles her ancestors faced, of battles both fought and lived, he found himself grappling with his own heart's turmoil. This was not merely about the land anymore. It was rooted deeper, a quest for conscience, justice, and a shared future. A seed of empathy began to germinate within him, pushing aside his earlier defenses as he began to see the complex tapestry of life that lay beyond the boundaries of property lines. He realized this journey was not simply about preserving his vision, but rather redefining it in a way that could honor both his dreams and theirs. But as Nora shared her stories, Jack became acutely aware of the chasm between their lives. It struck him that discussions about ownership were dwarfed by generational grief. The weight of the history she revealed only deepened his sense of obligation. As the shadows lengthened, the implications of their conversation loomed larger. Jack was faced with an undeniable truth. He could walk away from the cabin, but could he walk away from this awakening? The moment pressed into the future like a shadow, urging him toward discovery, and Jack recognized he stood at another crossroads. What lay ahead was much larger than a simple land ownership issue. It was about building bridges to honor both past and future. And before him loomed the question that would define his next move. Would he choose to negotiate with Nora for a shared vision? Or would he cling to his original dream, potentially sacrificing a deeper connection? The air crackled with anticipation as Jack prepared to confront his evolving identity. Jack lingered on the weathered bench beside Nora, grappling with the enormity of her words. The story she shared echoed in his mind, mingled with his spiraling thoughts. Images of his visions for the cabin clashed violently with the legacy she unveiled, a legacy tied to a land vibrant with history, rich with pain and resilience. "What do you want from me, Jack?" Nora's question pierced the contemplative silence, and he felt himself involuntarily stiffening. There was a clash between honesty and a deep-seated urge to protect his dreams. "I want to understand," he said, trying to anchor his resolve. "But it seems like I'm also here to listen, to possibly stand with you." Her eyes narrowed slightly, as if weighing his sincerity. Jack took a moment to reassemble his thoughts. Rather than just seeing the cabin as an achievement of architectural mastery, he glimpsed it as a base for potential collaboration, an expansion of his vision into something more holistic. But it was daunting, given the histories he was just beginning to comprehend. "I thought owning it meant I could shape it, make it my own," he continued. Each word was a negotiation with himself as much as with her. "How do I do right by you and your people while still fulfilling my dream?" There it was, the crux of the matter, curling like smoke in the air. What did it mean to dream in someone else's shadow? Nora sat back, the tension dissipating slightly. "This land isn't yours to shape alone," she offered softly, her voice tempered with care, though resolute. "It's a shared heritage. Community means participating, not just consuming. This is where your challenge rests, Jack." He could feel his discomfort mounting. Was he capable of blending his pursuits with a broader narrative? It wasn't merely a question of coexistence, but one of humility and recognition. He pictured his architectural plans, once vibrant and noble, now reduced to blueprints devoid of significance without Nora's inclusion. What if, Jack started, a flicker of possibility igniting within him. What if we created something together, a space that honors both our stories? Nora's eyes lit up with a cautious intrigue. You'd have to meet the community, share your ideas, allow them to impact your plans. Trust is earned in movement, Jack, not mere words. There it was, a challenge rebounding within him, sparking something he had neglected, the capacity to forge alliances, the grit it would take to redirect his vision. He felt invigorated and terrified at once. Yes, I can do that, he said, almost to reassure himself. Nora smiled, a hint of pride in her demeanor. Then you might find the opportunity to enrich your understanding of what you're building here. Decisions lined up like dominoes in his mind, ready to topple one after the other. He would dive into this new journey, host conversations, foster relationships, acknowledge the narratives he had overlooked. The weight on his chest began to lighten even amidst uncertainty. As the sun dipped behind the trees, casting long shadows on the earth, Jack understood the difficult path he was stepping onto, one that demanded vulnerability and connection. He had shared his past with pride, but now it intertwined with a more profound heritage. What's next? He asked, eager to lean into this shift. You'll need to meet my people this weekend, Nora replied. They will want to understand who you are as much as you want to understand them. Prepare for questions, but also listen. Jack nodded, realizing the upcoming weekend could redefine him, not just as an architect, but as a man ready to be reshaped by new experiences. This was the confrontation that mattered, embracing the unknown while standing firm in his commitment to evolve. A sense of purpose surged through him, igniting a determination he thought he had mastered but had only begun to understand. The path was confirmed. He would build not just for himself, but with a communal spirit in mind, allowing others to carve their stories alongside his. Yet doubts lingered at the edges of his optimism. Could he navigate this new world without losing his core? As the evening descended, Jack remained transfixed, not on mere ownership, but on shared futures interwoven in the quest to claim a space for dreams still waiting to flourish. The night whispered promises of challenges and breakthroughs yet to come, drawing him into a narrative far greater than himself. How would he prove he was more than just an architect, but a catalyst for shared legacy? The morning sun spilled into the cabin with a gentle insistence, illuminating the wooden beams and rustic charm that had initially drawn Jack to the property. Today, however, its warmth felt different, charged with anticipation and the unknown. Jack brewed a strong cup of coffee and sat at the small kitchen table, a battleground of sketches and architectural ideas strewn about like fragments of his past. As he sipped, his mind replayed Nora's words, each one echoing louder than the last. Trust is earned in movement. What did that mean for him? Perhaps it wasn't enough to simply present his designs. It required something deeper, genuine engagement. His stomach tightened at the thought. Jack opened his laptop and began drafting an email to the architect he had initially hired for the cabin. He wanted to discuss his shift in perspective, the need for collaboration and inclusion. But the more he typed, the more he hesitated. Would the architect understand this change? Jack had always been a solo player. Everything he'd accomplished was born from his vision alone. Inviting others to influence his work felt like relinquishing control. With his brow furrowed, he deleted the email. Maybe it wasn't ready yet. He would confront those thoughts in the community meeting with Nora's people. This could be a chance to challenge his own views, break down the walls he had constructed around his professional identity. As he prepared himself for the day, Jack flicked through his sketches one last time. Plans that seemed so bold and beautiful now appeared one-dimensional, entirely centered on his desires rather than the intertwined narratives of the land and its people. Arriving at the gathering space, Jack found it buzzing with voices. He stood at the entrance, acutely aware of each heartbeat driving him toward uncertainty. Nora spotted him and motioned for him to join a group gathered around a small fire pit, laughter mingling with the crisp morning air like an invitation. He approached, heart racing, and introduced himself, feeling exposed under their attentive gazes. Questions flowed in, some curious, some skeptical. "What do you plan to build here?" one man asked, his tone edged with caution. Jack took a breath. This felt monumental. "I want to create a space that reflects the stories of this land," he said, his voice steadier than he felt. "I hope to honor the legacy that has shaped it." As he spoke, he felt their interest waver, but also shift slightly. A woman chimed in, asking, "How does your vision include our narratives? Are you willing to change your plans based on what we say?" The probing nature of the question pierced through the bravado he tried to project, forcing him to confront his intentions directly. Yes, he stumbled through an answer. "I am open to adjustments. I want to co-create something that respects the history and context." They continued to question him, prodding for deeper understanding while sharing their own stories, rich with culture and emotion. With each exchange, Jack felt fragments of his self-imposed limitations begin to erode, replaced with a growing awareness that this venture would not be solely about construction. It was about healing, recognition, and cooperation. As the discussions deepened, Jack's confidence grew. Ideas began to crystallize in his mind, integrating traditional elements with modern design, ensuring spaces were welcoming and reflective of the community's values. His apprehension dissolved slowly, replaced by a burgeoning excitement. Yet towards the end of the meeting, a man introduced himself as the tribal historian. He leaned closer to Jack, eyes intense. "Before you proceed, you must understand the spiritual significance of the land. Your presence here can either honor or obliterate our past." Jack's heart raced again, but this time it was not fueled by fear. He felt a flicker of understanding. This wasn't just an architectural project. It was the intersection of history, culture, and modernity. How could he craft a physical space while navigating the intangible threads that bind people to their ancestral lands? The discussion would challenge him far beyond blueprints and design. As the meeting wound down, Jack realized that this was no longer merely about what he could construct. It was about the authenticity of his commitment. Later, as he reflected on the morning's revelations while driving home, he felt an even greater sense of responsibility. Could he truly balance his ambitions with respect for this land and its people? Would he be able to navigate this maze of identity and legacy without losing sight of himself in the process? The expansive road ahead loomed large before him, a metaphorical journey stretching into territories unknown. As he turned onto the familiar lane leading to his cabin, a single thought crystallized. The moment had come to face the most significant question of all. What was he willing to sacrifice to ensure this vision became a shared reality? Jack parked his truck outside the cabin, the crunch of gravel under his boots sending tremors of uncertainty through him. He stepped inside, the familiar scent of wood and earth enveloping him, yet it felt foreign in light of his recent revelations. He had always prided himself on being a decisive architect, but now he felt more like an amateur who had stumbled headlong into a culture he could barely comprehend. Sitting at the table cluttered with sketches, he absently traced his finger over the outlines of buildings that seemed to taunt him with their arrogance. He realized these designs hadn't accounted for the land's soul or the voices of those connected to it. This wasn't simply a project to him anymore. It was a crossroads, a vital point demanding reflection, respect, and a willingness to evolve. He opened his laptop again, staring at a blank email draft addressed to his architect. A surge of anxiety washed over him. How could he articulate his new vision? What if his collaborator viewed this as indecisiveness rather than openness? His fingers hovered over the keyboard, hesitating as doubt crept in. The notion of truly sharing his vision, the vulnerability it required, was a daunting prospect. Did he have the courage to pave a path different from what he had meticulously envisioned? A voice in his mind echoed Nora's earlier words. Trust is earned in movement. Taking a deep breath, Jack resolved to move forward, trusting that the act of sharing his uncertainty might cultivate the very trust he sought. The stakes were higher now. He needed to prove himself worthy of this opportunity, to earn not only the trust of the community, but also of himself. With renewed determination, he began to type, crafting a message that was both an invitation and an olive branch. He articulated his desire to revisit their discussions, to incorporate their ideas genuinely into the design, and to meet personally to explore how their narratives could reshape his intentions. It wasn't just about design anymore. It was about weaving their histories into a new future. When he hit send, a wave of anxiety washed over him again. What if they rejected the offer? What if it was proof he could never rise to the occasion? But beneath the fear lay a flickering hope that lit the way for his evolving self. Jack had never shied away from complex challenges, and this felt like the most significant one yet. The following days blurred together as he awaited a response. Each morning, he would brew coffee, pour it into his favorite mug, and sit quietly, contemplating the enormity of the journey he was undertaking. He would sketch an early concept for the project, insisting on planting designs that drew inspiration from the land and its stories, yet still feeling the tug of inadequacy. Then, a reply came. Not just any reply. It was an invitation to meet with a group of elders, including the tribal historian who had first challenged his understanding. Jack's heart raced. This was his chance to delve deeper, to explore the spiritual significance of the land. The very essence he now knew had to be central in his plans. As he prepared for the meeting, Jack felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. The elders would hold a mirror to his intentions, and he wondered if he was truly prepared to face what he might find. Would they see him as a legitimate ally, or merely an outsider hoping to exploit their heritage for personal gain? Arriving at the gathering, Jack's mind buzzed with questions. What traditions would he encounter? How would their stories reshape his perception not just of the project, but of his own identity as an architect? The air felt heavy with expectation, and tension coiled in his stomach. He was walking into a crucible of not only professional development, but personal transformation. He took a deep breath, pushed the door open, and stepped inside, ready to confront the legacies and complexities that awaited him. The moment had come to face not just the community, but the depths of his own motivations. What awaited him beyond the threshold could very well shatter his preconceived notions, igniting change he never imagined he needed. Would he emerge transformed, or would the weight of the past prove too burdensome to bear? As Jack entered the gathering, he found himself enveloped by an atmosphere thick with history and wisdom. The room, adorned with ancestral artifacts, felt like a living archive. His surroundings began to strip away his practiced pretensions, revealing the core of who he truly was. This was more than a project. It was a sacred dialogue with a community whose stories he had only barely begun to grasp. The elders settled in around a low table, their eyes searching him, a silent assessment taking place. Jack could feel their gaze weighing his intentions like a stone on his chest. He swallowed hard, grappling with the shadows of doubt that threatened to engulf him. "Why are you here?" asked the historian, her voice steady but penetrating. The question rolled through the room, and Jack felt its weight. If he stumbled now, if he fell back into the comfort of architect jargon, he risked losing their trust before he even started. "I'm here to learn," he replied, his voice steadier than he felt. "I want to understand how the land speaks to you and how we can honor that sacred dialogue in my designs." The historian studied him, her eyes narrowing slightly as if peering into his very soul. "To learn is good, but understanding comes at a cost. Is your heart truly open to what you will find?" Jack hesitated, the candor of her question cutting through his rehearsed lines. Was his heart open? Could it bear the weight of truths he had yet to uncover? He nodded, but internally he knew it was more complicated than a simple affirmation. As the conversation unfolded, the elders began to share stories, tales of the land, of seasons that shaped their lives, of losses that had scarred them deeply. Jack listened intently, absorbing every word, every nuance. The depth of their connection to the land spoke to him like a primal drum, reverberating through his core. In one poignant story, an elder spoke of a tree, painstakingly preserved through generations. This tree is not just a life form, it is a witness to our history, a bearer of our lineage. Every branch holds a story, every leaf whispers our names. Jack felt an awakening within him. The fragile concept of a building design melted away, replaced by an understanding of his role not as a creator, but as a steward. His sketches began to appear less about his aesthetic and more about developing a relationship, a partnership with the earth and its stories. Yet amidst this illumination, a dark thread of anxiety wove through his thoughts. What if he failed to capture the essence they imparted? What if his attempts to blend their histories with his vision led to misinterpretation and offense? The elders wrapped up their stories, and as silence filled the room, they turned to Jack once more. "What do you envision?" The question hung like a heavy cloud, and he understood that this moment was pivotal. Drawing a deep breath, Jack shared his preliminary ideas, not as finished designs, but as a framework of connection. He spoke of integrating natural elements, of preserving the sacred spaces, and of making spaces not merely to inhabit, but to celebrate the land. As he poured his thoughts into the air before them, he felt the tension begin to ease. Their reactions were varied. Some nodded in affirmation, while others remained skeptical, challenging him on his intentions, demanding clarity. Each question became a probe into his resolve, and with each response, he confronted his own uncertainties. As the meeting concluded, the elders agreed to collaborate further. With each endorsement, Jack felt a rush of relief, but it was shadowed by the reality of the journey ahead. This was just the beginning. He had regained a foothold, but had not yet crossed into the realm of true understanding. Walking out of the gathering, he felt lighter yet burdened. There was an undeniable tension within him, a mix of anticipation and fear over what he had yet to learn, and the possibility that his best efforts might still fall short. Now, with more questions than answers, Jack knew he had to dig deeper. What elements of their stories were still hidden, waiting to bleed into his designs? And was he truly prepared for the trust they were beginning to extend, however cautiously? As he headed back to his truck, the sun setting behind him, he felt a growing resolve. This journey was about more than architecture. It was a quest for identity, a chance to merge the man he thought he was with the one he was becoming. The impending revelations loomed ahead, and Jack's heart raced with both trepidation and readiness. What would he discover when he searched the deeper layers of their history, the hidden lessons that could reform not just his project, but his very self? Jack sat alone in his truck, the weight of the gathering still pressing on his chest. The fading sunlight cast elongated shadows, illuminating the thoughts swirling in his mind. For too long, he had framed architecture as a solitary pursuit, an opportunity for personal accomplishment. But now, the layers of his ambition had started to peel away, revealing a deeper, more intricate purpose that threaded through the stories he had barely begun to grasp. He couldn't shake the historian's question, "Is your heart truly open to what you will find?" It echoed in his mind like a haunting refrain, demanding introspection. Jack realized that to truly honor the land and its stories, he needed more than just an open heart. He needed vulnerability, a willingness to confront his own preconceived notions of design and space. The elders had shared their essence with him, and now he needed to transform that essence into something tangible. The idea felt overwhelming. How could he translate their history, their struggles, and their relationships with the land into structures that spoke? He wasn't just building walls. He was fabricating a bridge between the past and the present, a delicate task that ignited both excitement and fear within him. A sense of rebellion stirred inside Jack. Too often, he had conformed to the expectations of his profession, crafting structures that catered to trends rather than stories. The question was how to redefine his approach without losing himself in the process. Seeking clarity, he decided to visit the land where he would put his designs into practice. As he stepped onto the ground marked for development, the atmosphere felt different from the sterile environment of his office. The earth beneath his feet pulsed with life, rich in texture and layered with untold stories. Jack took a deep breath, letting the fragrance of the soil mix with the profound silence that surrounded him. Here was the canvas that called for more than just his professional expertise. It required a symbiosis of intention. He knelt down, brushing his fingertips against the ground. Each grain seemed to whisper secrets, echoes of those who had walked this land long before him. Jack envisioned incorporating elements of the stories he had heard. The enduring tree, the rhythm of the seasons, the sacred spaces filled with memory and spirit. Yet doubt flickered at the edge of his mind. What if his interpretations led to misrepresentation? In attempting to honor the land, could he inadvertently impose his narrative upon it? This moral question gnawed at him. The responsibility felt heavier than any architectural project he had ever undertaken. Gathering his scattered thoughts, Jack decided to sketch. Not designs or grand blueprints, but loose concepts, simple lines and curves that contemplated the shapes of trees, the undulations of hills. With each stroke, he sought dialogue with the land, allowing it to guide his hand. This act became a meditation, quieting the storm of self-doubt and replacing it with a profound resolve. Hours passed, and as twilight descended, Jack felt a shift within himself. The act of creation was no longer a solitary journey. It was a collaborative relationship that melded his vision with the spirit of the land. In this realization, he found a kernel of confidence that sparked brighter ideas and deeper connections. Yet, just when he began to feel certain, a subtle tension returned. He recalled a final thought from the elders. "Is your heart truly open?" The sincerity in their words felt like a challenge now, a reminder of the work yet to be done. As Jack headed back, a sense of impending confrontation rose within him. The journey ahead would require confronting not just the fears of inadequacy, but the very real possibility of failure in achieving the balance he sought. It was a call to engage with the unknown parts of himself, to stand firm in the face of potential setbacks. What awaited him in the weeks to come? The next gathering with the elders loomed on the horizon, but would they see his heart as open, or merely as a reflection of his own ambitions? Jack's thoughts roiled with anticipation as he steered the truck down the dirt road, ready to navigate this path of discovery, knowing that the next chapter could very well become a reckoning. The sun lingered low on the horizon as Jack navigated the familiar winding roads back to town, igniting a firestorm of thoughts that demanded his immediate attention. Each curve of the path felt like a new layer of his internal struggle, a quest for meaning colliding with the looming uncertainty of his upcoming meeting with the elders. He sensed the weight of their gaze already, heavy with its judgment, and he wondered what they would see when they looked through him. Jack parked his truck outside his modest workshop, an old building marked by the wear of time, yet imbued with character. It was a space where dreams had begun to take shape on paper, but never quite met the gravity of reality. As he entered, the scent of sawdust and aged wood filled his lungs, grounding him. He needed to cleanse this space of distractions. Everything he had created here felt too aligned with what had come before. He wanted to erase the hesitation that lingered within the walls. He walked to his drafting table, sweeping aside old blueprints that no longer resonated with his current vision. After a few moments of swirling thoughts and scattered sketches, he reached a decision. He would not show up as a designer to the elders, but as a translator, someone to articulate the stories woven into the land itself. With renewed purpose, he grabbed a fresh sheet of paper and began to sketch as though reclaiming the narratives he had been entrusted with. Each curve and line began to morph into suggestive forms, a resilient tree arching across the horizon, a gentle incline that could cradle gatherings, or an outstretched arm that beckoned the wind to pause and listen. But even with each stroke, unease coiled around him, constraining his breath. Could he persist in this newfound approach without reverting to the stifling expectations of the past? Or worse, could he fail to resonate with the elders, missing the mark and fracturing the fragile trust he sought to build? Mid-sketch, Jack paused, suddenly aware that he had been holding his breath. He closed his eyes and focused on the rise and fall of his chest, a rhythmic reminder of his heart moving towards a transformative state. Embracing vulnerability as a strength began to loosen the knots of anxiety within him. Did vulnerability equate to weakness, or was it a doorway to fostering understanding and connection? There was power in fear, he realized, an opportunity to mold it into a guiding light rather than a shroud of darkness. The following morning arrived too quickly, sunlight creating urgent patterns on his workshop floor as he rushed to assemble his sketches into something coherent to share. Clutching the sheets, he felt more than nerves. He felt a palpable determination. Today was more than a meeting. It was the manifestation of months spent wrestling with his identity as both an architect and a conduit for the history he had come to cherish. As Jack approached the gathering spot, he caught sight of the elders standing in a huddled circle. Their presence radiated a stern warmth, grounding him in reality, yet their formidable energy sent a tremor through his core. He wondered what kind of reception he would receive. Would they see the fragile architecture of his intent, or sniff out the anxiety still bubbling beneath the surface? With his heart thumping uncomfortably, Jack stepped forward, ready to confront the unknowns awaiting him. The moment had arrived for him to lay bare not just his designs, but his commitment to honoring their stories. What challenges would confront him in this bid for authenticity, and could he navigate them without losing himself in the process? The ground beneath him felt unstable, as if the very earth were waiting to reveal a truth he had yet to grasp. Jack stood before the elders, sketches clutched tightly in his hands as their eyes, sharp and discerning, pierced through the layers of his carefully constructed facade. The air thickened with unspoken words, each elder emanating a unique presence that magnified his uncertainties. He drew a deep breath, silently invoking the strength he'd hoped would fill him like the morning sun. He would not allow the past to dictate his future any longer. As he began to speak, his voice betrayed a slight tremor. Today, I wish to share a vision, not merely my designs, but the very essence of our land and its stories. A flicker of recognition crossed the faces before him. Whether it was anticipation or skepticism, he could not tell. His heart raced, each beat resonating with the urgency to express what had been bottled inside him for too long. He unfolded the first sketch, revealing the sweeping lines of a gathering place set against the backdrop of the sun-kissed hills. This space is a reflection of the stories I have heard, a testament to resilience, he emphasized, momentarily surprised by the steadiness in his voice. As he explained the inspiration drawn from local tales of strength and unity, he sensed the elders lean in, a physical manifestation of their engagement. Yet, doubt loomed ominously at the edges of his thoughts. What if they scrutinized him for his inexperience? What if his interpretations fell flat in the face of their lived histories? Each question led him deeper into a spiral of anxiety, tugging at the corners of his resolve. To push those fears aside, he allowed himself to remember the trees he had sketched, their roots intertwining beneath the ground, symbolizing the interconnectedness of stories, his included. "Can architecture embody stories?" he asked, half to himself. "I believe it can, but only if we lend it our voices. I am here to listen, to learn." The elders exchanged glances, their expressions unreadable. He pushed forward. "I am not here to impose my ideas, but to weave a narrative that belongs to all of us. With your guidance, maybe these ideas can grow." Silence hung heavily in the air. The elders shared quiet whispers among themselves, fragments of their conversation drifting to Jack like leaves in the wind. He felt exposed, vulnerable, and suddenly questioned if he had indeed stepped too far into this role of a translator. It was one thing to take risks artistically, but quite another to put his trust in others' perceptions. Just as the tension reached a high note, an elder stepped forward. Her stance was resolute, and she commanded attention with an air of authority that made Jack's heart pound harder. "You speak of stories and connection, yet what you've shown lacks depth," she declared, her voice cutting through the stillness. "Do you understand our pain, our history? You must dig deeper." Each word felt like an arrow aimed straight at his conscience. At that moment, Jack's determination flickered. Had he indeed skimmed the surface of a vast, complex history? Could he truly connect with these narratives? The confrontation felt like a direct reflection of his internal struggle. How could he build a bridge of understanding when he was still trembling on the shore? "Tell me what I've missed," Jack implored, leaning in with an earnestness that surprised even himself. "I want to learn, not just to design, but to honor what is sacred." The words spilled out, a reflection of desperation mingling with hope. The elder regarded him, her expression softening yet steely. "If you seek to honor us, then your task is not merely in sketching, but in understanding what has gone unspoken. You hold the potential, but only if you choose to listen, and profoundly." Jack nodded, feeling a flicker of clarity amid the confusion. The conversation had shifted, unveiling layers of meaning that had been obscured by his own insecurities. Perhaps vulnerability could indeed be a doorway to deeper connections, a catalyst for transformation rather than an obstacle. As he prepared to respond, the weight of the elders' expectations bore down on him, yet, hidden within that weight was a flicker of hope. What new revelations awaited him now? The moment stood suspended, opening a gateway for more profound conversations about identity, culture, and the very essence of creation as an architect. Jack felt the urge to push forward, but first, he would have to brave the uncharted territory of truth in a way he had yet to comprehend. Would he be willing to confront the hidden depths of understanding and embrace the lessons that lay ahead? Jack stood in the soft glow of dawn, the shimmering mist rising from the landscape around his cabin, a sanctuary now not just for himself, but also a bridge to the stories of Nora and her people. The past year had transformed him in ways he hadn't anticipated. No longer was he just an architect crafting spaces. He was a steward, a translator of histories, melding his vision with the traditions and hopes of another community. With sketches strewn across his kitchen table, Jack smiled, feeling an exhilarating sense of fulfillment. It had been months since he first met Nora, and the fraught journey had culminated in something beautiful. Through countless conversations with elders and community members, he had learned the intricacies of their existence, how the earth, trees, and even the wind held stories, traditions passed down generations. His architectural designs had become something more profound, embodying not just the physical structure, but spiritual connections to the land. Today marked the groundbreaking of the communal space he'd envisioned, a space that would celebrate both his aspirations and the ancestral legacy of the Apache. The previous week had been electric. He and the elders had deliberated long into the evenings, blending modern design with indigenous elements, crafting outlines that resonated deeply with their heritage. Each plan felt like it danced on sacred ground, affirming the historical significance of the space. He had finally garnered their trust, and it ignited a rock-solid confidence within him. Stepping outside, Jack took a moment to absorb the peaceful surroundings. The day ahead was monumental. Nora had warmly invited the community for the groundbreaking ceremony, a visible acknowledgement of their partnership. As he walked toward the construction site, his thoughts filled with hopes. The laughter of children playing near the newly designed gathering spaces, the stories exchanged around fire pits designed to honor their ancestors, the cultural festivals that could now take place here, an emblem of unity rather than division. When Jack arrived, a site teeming with life greeted him. Families had brought food, songs filled the air, and there was a palpable excitement that resonated among the community members. Nora approached him, her smile radiating warmth and pride, a mirror of the journey they had traversed together. "This is just the beginning," she said, her voice a soothing balm against the backdrop of jubilant chatter. Jack nodded, knowing the truth in her words. This project represented a healing bridge that would allow for ongoing dialogue and understanding. Underneath the bright blue sky, the official ceremony began. The elders stood beside Jack, and as he took the mic, he felt a surge of gratitude and purpose wash over him. The weight of his journey, the fears and doubts he had encountered, felt like a foundation stone, settled and secure. "Today, we celebrate not simply bricks and mortar," he began, looking out at the sea of faces. "We honor the stories, the lives, and the spirits tethered to this land. My goal has been to listen, not as an architect imposing visions, but as a neighbor, a learner." With each word, Jack felt a sense of release. He was not perfect, nor did he claim to command the complexities of tradition and history, but he could be committed to growth. He could weave together modern architecture with ancestral values. As the ceremony continued, guests took turns sharing their hopes for the space, stories interwoven with laughter and a few tears. Jack could see the legacy of the land come alive, and they were brought together by more than just geography. They reclaimed their history and future, not just as separate communities but as intertwined narratives growing hand in hand. Then came the moment of breaking ground. Jack felt the weight of the shovel and the gravity of the opportunity take hold as he turned the first clods of earth. Cheers erupted around him. It wasn't about achievement. Reality was deeper, the growth of relationships, respect, and understanding. Jack stepped back, allowing Nora to take her turn with the shovel. This gesture felt right. It symbolized unity, a journey from conflict to collaboration. The land sang beneath their feet, echoing with generations of stories, and he felt woven into that fabric. As the sun began to set, casting a golden light over the site, Jack realized he had achieved more than he had ever dreamed. He had not only bought a cabin, he found himself in a tapestry of stories and became a steward of healing. The sense of fulfillment radiated like warmth. It was simply not about the plans or the tools of his trade, but the transformative power of openness and collaboration that crafted an identity more profound than he ever imagined. This journey would continue, but today marked a resolute commitment to honor not only the land but the stories it enfolded, forever intertwined with both his dreams and theirs. You need to subscribe now to our channel and never miss another incredible journey of personal transformation. Leave a like now to support our stories and help others discover the power of growth. Comment below your thoughts on Jack's journey and what you believe lies ahead for him. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need inspiration and motivation in their own lives. Don't wait even one more second. Let's spread the stories that matter.